Hey, folks, welcome to the Beans and Dice podcast, the podcast version. I'm Carlos.
And I'm Mitchell.
And in today's episode, we're going to talk about Chocolate Factory and how we teach games. Stick around.
You're listening to the Beans and Dice podcast, a podcast about how we game.
Chocolate Factory was a game we played last week. So we're going to give it a little bit more of a attention and focus to this game, Chocolate Factory, that Mitchell introduced us to last week after the show on Board Game Arena. And the description of Chocolate Factory, set in the early 20th century of entrepreneurs and chocolatiers experimenting with new ways to create and market chocolates, you are assigned the task of Chief Chocolate Maker. Chocolate Factory is a Euro game of literal factory building and moving chocolates. You must complete the largest number of chocolates required by retailers for the best value. The game also features wooden chocolate pieces and a movable conveyor belt, making the physicality blended with Euro mechanisms a unique experience. So that's the description on BGG of Chocolate Factory. I think the piece that stands out for me the most, which is what got me interested, Mitchell, when you described the game to us, was the actual physical, pushable conveyor belt in this game. That mechanism is amazing. How would you describe Chocolate Factory?
Yeah, I mean, I talked about it a couple of weeks ago on the podcast. I definitely think the conveyor belt is the attention grabber. Essentially, you're literally building an engine, a chocolate factory, machine parts. There are 8 possible slots, kind of a top and bottom action in 4 different columns, and whichever chocolate is on the conveyor belt crate that lines up with those actions, you can run the chocolate through that machine and do specific things to it. And, each round you get a certain number of, base chocolate pieces, which are like the beans that can be pushed through, and you can do different things to them based on what orders you have to fulfill, make them different kinds of chocolate. And that's really unique. It's a very tactile game. The components, they are wooden, but they look really nice. They make you want to go and grab a Kit Kat. So that's an added benefit, or maybe a disadvantage, if you're trying to stay on the healthy side.
After we played our first game of it, I was so ready to go to the local convenience store and buy me, a Snickers, a Twix, a Kit Kat, some Hershey bars. It really does get your salivation. Is that a word? Is that even English?
Yeah, something like that.
The juice is flowing. It gets the juices flowing. I learned it on BGA. Haven't played the physical copy. The idea of that conveyor belt is, like I said, what really intrigues me about this game, because it seems so linear is the word that Wayne used when we talked about it after we played. So in so many games, I feel like the things that you have to do in the game are so spread out in order to succeed, like a viticulture, right? All the little worker placement spots in order to produce the wine, to make the contracts, they're all very spread out like a web. But in Chocolate Factory, it feels like it's structured, it's linear, it's left to right. Things are moving on this conveyor belt. You're processing them in your plant as they move, and it just really made it easier for my brain to understand. Yeah. What'd you think about this conveyor belt mechanism?
So the thing is, you're very limited in what you can do. But what's important and what I like is you have to decide when to do things and in what order to do things. So, do I turn this seed right now on the first slot of the conveyor belt into a chocolate chunk, or do I save it for 2 slots down the road where I can make a seed into 2 pieces of wrapped candy? Your currency kind of is coal, and you get a certain amount of coal at the beginning of each round. And so you're limited to a certain number of actions. So some of the parts take more coal than others. So it's really about optimizing your timing as opposed to what you're doing, which I think you don't have 20 different spaces on the board like viticulture. You've got 4, and you have to figure out the best way to do what you can in a certain order at a certain time. And I think that's a different way of thinking about things, which is why this one stands out a little bit more than your typical order for fulfillment games.
Yeah, and the spots in your factory, so you start off with some built-in machines for your factory, but the spots are limited for that one location with a top and a bottom part that you can use to impact how that chocolate or that bean is processed, right? The action you take with it. So it feels like it's not a lot of decision space there, because it's in this one spot. It can only be touched by the top and or the bottom in either order to process whatever's on that part of the belt, the conveyor belt at that moment. But man, if you don't get that right and that thing moves to the right, because it's going to move, like you can't stop. There's no red button to stop the conveyor belt. It will move. And if it's not in a state you need it to be in by the time it moves to its next spot on the conveyor belt, that hurts.
Yeah, I mean, for a game where the theme is really lighthearted and fun and family-friendly, it is extremely brain-burning and can be very punishing if you don't pre-plan enough, for sure.
Now, there is a little bit of forgiveness to it, though, because at the end of the conveyor belt, anything that you didn't throw down the chute into your storeroom falls out of the conveyor belt into your storeroom, and then you can burn it. Like anything in the storeroom at any time during your turn, you can convert it into coal. Just kind of throw it in the fire and make coal. And again, like you mentioned, coal is the main resource for your action. It's like your action points for each round. And it's a 6-day work week. So you got 6 days, and each day you're going to get a certain number of coal. So even if you do mess up a little bit, you don't feel as bad because you're like, okay, I'm not going to get a lot of coal this round because it's early in the game. But you know what? This chocolate chunk is going to fall into the storeroom. I'm going to convert it into coal and then do something better with it later. So it's not fully punishing like you messed up and you got stuck with something you can never use again.
Yeah, I feel like kind of those first rounds, pretty much everybody's going to be doing similar things because you haven't built your engine yet and you have so little coal. But a lot of the turns, you're really kind of setting yourself up for the next turn. Sometimes it's hard to accomplish things in just one round. And I think our play was probably just about an hour, maybe a little bit under. So I like that, even though you're not getting something done every round, it's still fast paced and you're getting stuff accomplished in a short amount of time. And then you can just turn around and play again. I think we played 2 games that night, right? In just a couple hours. They were not back to back. We had the show in between, but it's fast.
Yeah, we did
enough.
a pre-show game and then we did a post-show game, and they were about an hour of play, including the teach.
Right, yeah, because the second time Rob was learning. That's right. So there was a teach both times. I was going to say, do we want to talk a little bit of strategy tips?
Yeah, and before we do that, I wanted to kind of go through the layout of the board and the different parts of what you'd structure, like the turn structure and the board piece, because I found that interesting. So you got the top of the board, and the top of the board kind of lays out the days of the week, and it's going to tell you how much coal you're going to get. It's got some reminders up there about the bonus points, right? So it reminds you that if you diversify the different retailers that you go to, you can get bonus points. I think if you go to 5 different retailers, you get extra points. And then it also reminds you that you get points for having the most corner stores fulfilled. And
Which
corner
are, like,
stores
personal
are your
goals.
own personal goals on your board. So you kind of have to divide your attention with, do I want to spend time selling to the retailers because I want to diversify, or do I want to focus on one retailer, or do I want to diversify and try to get those extra bonus points? Do I want to focus on my own corner store? So that push and pull of like, where am I going to put my energy? I like that aspect. And then just below that is that drafting component. So you've got the corner stores, the retailers, which are the open public goals for everyone. And each retailer has a different name, right? It's a different store. And then they each have a different desire, a different chocolate or types of chocolates that they want to be sold to or buy from you. But in order to visit them, you got to get a worker that goes to that location at the end of the factory phase, where once you're done using your factory, you can then deliver. So you can only deliver to one retailer per round, or per the 6 rounds in the game, and you have to draft for it. Like, I like that aspect because they added this open drafting where you have to pick starting in order and then snaking back. You're going to pick a worker and you're going to pick a part for your factory. So for y'all folks at home, if you're thinking about it, imagine having in a 4-player game 5 workers laid out and 5 factory parts laid out, and each player's, starting with the first player, they're going to draft either a worker or a factory part, and then it goes down the line to the last person, and then it snakes back around so that the last person picks a second time, and it goes back to the first person who picks last. But what was really interesting, Mitchell, when I didn't understand it when you first described it, which maybe why I'm focusing so much on it in this audio medium, is I really wanted to get across, is there's no order on how to pick them. You don't have to pick a worker and then a part, or a part and then a worker. You decide which one you want to draft first. How do you think that impacts the decision space in the game?
Well, I think there's definitely a lot of player interaction at that moment, which is good because once you're running your factory, it's completely solitaire. But the idea is that, man, I really want that factory part. But at the same time, like, do I want to screw somebody else up by getting this really good worker? And also, there's another mechanic that I didn't really understand why it was done at first, but it's kind of interesting. So it depends how many packs there are, depends on player count. But essentially, some of the cards are paired up into what's called a pack. And if I choose a pack, I'm picking 2 cards, I'm only keeping one of them, and I'm discarding the other. So if I choose a pack, I am not just diminishing my opponent's choices by the 1 card I'm picking, but I'm diminishing it by 2. So it's like, even if that's not the best card for me that I'm picking from there, what is the opportunity cost, or what is the cost benefit of me also diminishing their choices, which I think is pretty cool as well. Now that I've seen it in play, I understand why it's there.
I love that decision space they added with the packs, right? Having to decide, do I want to take a card that's by itself, or do I want to take the pack, the pair of cards, either workers or parts, knowing that it's going to burn an option. So maybe there are 2 decent options there. Maybe there's 1 great option by itself, but you got 2 good options in the pack. And by taking out the 2 good options, you take one and then burn the other, you're impacting the rest of the table a lot more than if you took a single card.
Yeah, so basically so there's always going to be 5 cards, no matter what the player count is, and the packs are going to be made to where,
is it always 5?
Yeah, and so unless their player counts, there's more packs. So if a pack is chosen, whenever it gets to the last person, they have no choice. And I think that happened almost every round in our play, because we always joke like, I wonder what I'm going to pick this round. But it's also like, if everybody picks employees and you pick factory parts, then by the time it gets around to you, you have less choice. So whether you're picking a factory part or an employee first kind of depends on what your opponents pick, because it might be to the point where there's only 1 factory part left. So it's like, I don't need to get that. I know I'm going to get it regardless. So let me go and get my pick of the employees. So you have to think about all those things whenever you're picking, because it's going to be influencing your opponents as well. And of course, you want it to be more detrimental to them than to you.
I really love that space, because it makes it so important to accurately value what you're picking. Right? And I ruined some of my turns because I knew with what I had on the conveyor belt and which parts that were going to be impacting that item next, the type of chocolates that were going to come out from that. And if I didn't draft that specific employee or worker that delivers to that specific retailer that's looking for what my conveyor belt is starting to make, if I don't draft that can ruin the whole turn, because now I'm going to have all this candy that doesn't go anywhere.
That's kind of, if we're getting into strategy, that's always my number one thing I look at, is like, this employee. And here's the way I think of it. You're a thematic guy. It's like, these different stores are sending me their employees to help me in my factory for the day, but the caveat is I can only sell to them. Like, they get first dibs, So I kind of
man, I didn't even feel that. Like, I was wondering, why do they only go there? But now I get it.
I don't know if that's how it's explained in the rule book. I've read the rule book, but I focus on mechanics, not story when I'm reading them. But that's how it gels in my mind, But anyway, whenever I'm drafting, I look at, okay, which of these is going to let me accomplish a sale? I try my best to split my loyalties between every round. I try to make a sale to the global objectives and complete at least one level of my personal objectives. That's another thing we didn't mention. The personal objectives, there are different levels. There's small, medium, and large orders. And on the medium and large orders, you might sell you sell part of the order and get money, but you don't get a new one until you complete it all the way. And so I don't necessarily feel like I have to complete an entire card every round, but I feel like I at least got to move my marker up on a personal card and make at least one sale to the main board. And some ways that I do that, the 2 stores on the right, the left, the extreme sides, the left and the right. The one on the right, it changes from game to game, so it depends on which side you're using. But in the A side, which is what I've played the most, it's like you can either do 2 box chocolates, a box chocolate and a wrap chocolate, or 2 wrap chocolates. And the one all the way on the left is you can sell as many as you want as long as it's the same one. So I usually focus on those 2 whenever I don't have a clear path, because then I know, I have some options. Either that, or there's an employee you can draft where I guess he's not loyal to his store, and in addition to selling to his store, it also lets you sell at one other store, because otherwise your whole turn has got to be focused on that one store you can sell to, and that's extremely limiting. So your drafting affects the entire rest of your turn unless you're going to focus completely on personal goals.
And I know you focus on personal goals. I know Wayne went with the personal goal strategy, and it really went well for him. I did more of the focus on a single retailer and then get as high as I can with that retailer. And I don't think we've touched on this too much, but the scoring system for each retailer, there are 9 spots on there, and you're going to move your colored marker up 1 each time you sell whatever they desire to them. And sometimes you get bonuses for being able to like move 2 spaces for every 1 thing you sell, depending on your worker. But the 9 is the max that you're going to score on that retailer. And what I didn't understand when you first described it to me until we played it is, in order for someone to get points on that retailer, you either have to be first, second, or first or second. Is there a third?
Yeah, there's a third.
There's a third. But in order to score second, you have to be halfway or more to the first player's score. So when I pushed for like the 9, like I was like always trying to massively create a group of box chocolates so that I can sell 9 points worth of box chocolates to one retailer. That made it that if anyone else wanted to go to that card, that retailer, you better get to 5 or else you're not getting anything.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter. So here's the kind of the give and take. The alternative to that is, okay, you push all the way to 9 and nobody ever wants to go there, and you wasted your whole game getting to 9 and you still get X number of points. So you don't get points based on how high you are. You only get points based on your position. But at the same time, will that deter people? So, for example, if I'm several spaces above somebody, usually I kind of lay off on that because I don't think they're going to catch up to me. Because at some point, whether I'm, if you're on 2 and I'm on 7, it makes no difference if I get to 8 or 9. You're not halfway to me, so you're not going to get the points. But I really like that. So it's not like people could come in at the last minute and just like for really cheap grab some points for getting second or third place, unless the person who's at first kind of just barely went on it as well. It makes it a little bit more competitive there, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, I came in 3rd place, so it does make sense that winning more didn't help me on those retailers. Like I spent a lot of energy and coal and resources to win more when just winning would have been enough. Like I should have stayed with the Don Toretto win by an inch or win by a mile Fast and Furious line. Right? I didn't need to go all the way to 9. I could have won that card with a 6 or a 5 and then use that energy and those chocolates and that resources to go put my stuff somewhere else.
Well, that's why you really have to have your finger on the pulse of what the other players are doing, because, you can get to a safe lead, but then if you see they're starting to get those resources and they don't have those personal gold cards, because there's no hidden knowledge here, then you're like, okay, now let me push this a little bit more. And it's really hard to look at what other people are doing because you're running your factory simultaneously. I mean, if there's a contest or something, you could say, hey, let's do this turn by turn, but it would take forever. So you're almost like in solitaire mode trying to figure out your factory a lot of times and not paying attention to your opponents. And it's in moments like that where it hurts your game. And that's not a point that I've been able to get to in this game of being able to focus on my board and opponents' boards. But I think that would skyrocket your chances of victory in this one.
I'm going to have to try this one with Nick Oben. He does a really good job of knowing what he's going to do next and also knowing what you should do next. Right. And it really, you should see his face when you do something he didn't expect you to do. It almost makes him question his whole life theory. Like, wait a minute, that would have been the best answer. Why didn't you do that? What didn't I see? And you see it kind of jams up his brain. So I got to try this one with Nick to see if he can keep up with all that.
And with Nick, it's like, so if you don't make the most optimal choice, it screws up his plan because he was banking on you making that optimal choice, right?
Listen, man, this game, when you first brought it to my attention, I was like, okay, it looks cool. Okay, it's a 7. Right? Like I wanted to buy it. It's a 7. But after the plays, I really don't think a 7 rating on BGG is fair. Like I don't, maybe this game just hasn't gotten the distribution or the love, and I know 7's a good rating. Like 7.2, that's nothing to sneeze at. That's not a bad rating. But after playing the game, the only thing I can see that would be a detriment to it would be the randomness of the workers that come out. And maybe it's because I play with y'all jerks. Because if you're the first person to pick, you have no decision on what that last card is going to be, because someone will always pick the packs and prevent you from getting. I think Robert was picking a pack every time he drafted if a pack was available. Like I really think he enjoyed just being able to say, I left you with less options. So other than that little bit of lack of control, right, when you're drafting, I couldn't find a detriment in the game. I couldn't find a negative in the game outside of that.
Yeah, I definitely think it deserves a higher rating. There's a lot of like positive player experiences. Like there's what I really like is some of the parts. It's like, especially in later game, because the way it's organized is you start with the A and then it goes to the B, so they get more powerful. Where it's like you take a seed or something and it turns into like 4 candy pieces. And that feels so good. Like I always want to get that one because I feel like
the triplicator.
If I can get these machines that are doubling, tripling, quadrupling how much chocolate I have on the board, that it doesn't even matter what worker I'm getting. I should be able to do something with them, even if it's just completing those small corner shop orders. Whoever completes the most corner shop orders, the personal goals, gets I think it's 12 points. So like anytime I complete an order, I'm going for the small ones because I'm trying to get those extra 12 points. I want to flip those cards over right away rather than having to move my little piece up. So it's just there's so many small things that just feel good to do. Ooh, now I get to pick a new corner shop order. Ooh, now all of a sudden I have all these candy pieces on my factory. It's definitely one that if you enjoy it on BGA, you're going to enjoy it in person so much more because I'm manipulating that conveyor belt, playing with little pieces of candy, heavy wooden painted pieces. It's so nice.
And then the conveyor belt, like just I know in BGA I watched it move, but just I can imagine actually tactically sliding it left to right, watching the pieces go with the crate as it slides in there, and then activating each of those pieces is going to give you that tactile, that kinetic feel that to me I think is what is drawing me into really considering this as a purchase.
And I feel like that kind of aspect in other games, people would call it fiddly, but in this game, it's so much fun just to push those crates across. And then especially, so there's one card that gives you like an extra crate. It's so awesome. Oh, I'm going to grab another crate from the supply and I get to push 4 times this time. There's some cards that give you extra coal and that you feel like you hit the gold mine because, oh my gosh, I could do so many more things this round. Just there's so many little things about it that just feel good to do. And I think that's why I enjoy it so much. I
also think there might be a little bit of imbalances in the cards themselves. I talked about, the randomness of what's drafted out there for you. Like, for example, there's different miners, miners, not like children, like miners for coal. And some of them will give you like 4 coal, but then some of the miners will only give you 2 coal.
So I believe the reason for that is, I kind of mentioned this earlier, the 2 shops on the extreme ends can take lots of different things. I believe the miner that gives you more coal, if I remember correctly, don't quote me on this, it matches up to one of those shops in the middle that wants very specific things. So that's the trade-off.
And that's what I was going to ask is, how do you think they balanced the cards for what you get? Like some of the parts, right? I feel like the cost of the coal for what you get for that part doesn't feel perfectly balanced. Like I might spend 3 coal and like triplicate something, but then I'll spend 2 coal to just get 1 of something. So like it doesn't feel like it's a proportional progression for what you pay to get something. But what I didn't consider is on the worker side, who they tie to, what shops they tie to, and the ease of that shop to be able to deliver to them will impact how much that card does for you. That's a good observation.
Yeah, so what you're mentioning about the coal cost, 2 things. First of all, I feel like in later game, the B side of those factory pieces, the coal is going to become more efficient. You're going to be able to do more with less. Or it may cost more, but it's going to do more. But also, just because you're paying more coal to get more pieces doesn't necessarily mean that that's efficient, because if you have 10 yellow candies, for example, unless you have that one piece, one factory tile that's going to take yellow candies, what are you going to do with all that? So I personally
the
feel like
storeroom
it's
is limited. It's what, 2 pieces of candy in the storeroom is all you can save in between days?
Right. So, I mean, just throw it back in the furnace, burn it up, get some coal, have a lot of coal for next time.
And try it again. Yeah, but don't do like I did, where on the last turn, you end up burning everything, and you're really not going to do anything with it. But it's not terrible, because one of the friendly player experiences in this game is that endgame scoring, because every piece, everything that you've created, whether you left it as a chocolate bean, or you turn it into coal, or you turn it into some other processed candies, is going to give you points, right?
Yeah, 1 point per.
Which is a great feeling, because so many games will only give you points for certain types of resources, in this game, whether or not you process it, as long as you created it, you're going to get something for it. And that feels good.
Yeah, because there are so many times, like between the rounds. So the first thing that happens each round once you start the factory phase is you push a crate through. So where you left a piece of chocolate in the previous round, you think in your mind, okay, if I leave this here, then I can use this factory piece on it next time. So many times I get caught in this trap. If I forget, it's going to get pushed one time. So sometimes I have this piece between rounds. It's like, what am I going to do with this? And that's a good point. You can turn it into coal and use it, or it'll be points for you at the end of the game. So I like that as well.
Because I have yet to rate the game on BGG, and I'm complaining because I think 7.2 is too low. So I'll give my rating first on what I'm going to put on my BGG for my rating for my plays of Chocolate Factory. You know, I'd like to go 9. I'm going to go 8. I think 8 is where it's at for this game, and I'm going to be putting it on the want to buy list for my library, for my status. What would you say for you?
Well, you're sitting here complaining about it being a 7.2, and you're like, it's much better than that. I'm going to go up 0.8 points. Okay.
I rarely do 9s and 10s. Like 9 and 10s, you got to be like Clash of Culture level for 9 or 10. Like to me, 8 is awesome.
Do you remember?
It's excellent. It's described as excellent. Very much enjoy playing.
Where do you get that? I'm trying to find those descriptions of each number.
When I hover over it, let me go back here.
Let me see.
8. Oh, I'm sorry. 8 is very good. Enjoy playing. No, I'm sorry. It's a 9.
Oh,
9 is excellent. Very much enjoy playing. It is an excellent game.
What's 10? Just out of curiosity.
10, outstanding. Will always enjoy playing.
Yeah, I think I'll have to go to 9 as well. So one thing I will say, the more I play it, the more that I actually feel like you have less options. Because I've played it maybe 6 times, something like that. I think I played it 4 times before I taught you guys. And you feel like you have all these different options, but I think maybe there's not enough factory pieces and cards to really make it extremely replayable. I love playing it, but some things you see the same thing back to back in several games. So I can't give it a 10, but yeah, I'll put it at a 9 as well.
Do we know if there was expansions on this one?
So it was a
Upgrade
Kickstarter.
packs, more cards?
Yeah, if you get it, which I believe you could still get the deluxe edition, it comes with some mini expansions where you get extra cards and things, and that may help. Because in the base game, the stores that you can sell to, there's only 2 of each. It's front and back. You get 2 more in the expansion, or the deluxe edition, sorry, as well as new factory parts and employees, I believe. Some of the components are upgraded, like the first player marker and the round marker, but otherwise it's just that extra content there.
And now we're going to go into our conversation about how we teach games. All right, Mitch, you taught us Chocolate Factory by Alley Cat Games. And actually, in our call-in show this week, you received a compliment from one of the callers who was there.
He made me blush.
Right. On how well you taught the game. So, also, it's your profession, right? The thing you do for a living. So, you are a teacher by trade. So, lead us off in the conversation about how you teach games.
I love teaching games. I hate learning games. To be honest, I would rather read a rule book than have someone explain a game to me, because I need to know every detail before I can start a game. And I feel like most people, I feel like you and Rob are probably this way. You guys are more like, you more so than Rob. It's more like, give me the gist and I'll figure it out.
No, if you let Rob go, he will tell you every aspect of the game. He's trying to cut back on that because people say he goes too long. So I think if you let him go, he's going to be right up your alley.
So well, here's why I say this, because I taught Rob several games the Dice Tower Retreat, and I feel like he just always felt overwhelmed But now that you mentioned that, yes, whenever he taught me,
it's because we're getting old, man. We're like in our I think Rob's like 7 years older than me, or something. Like he's I'm 41 now, so that would put Rob like in his late 40s. Like that's damn near dead. He can't process that much information.
Anyway, but now that I think back, I think it was him that taught me Arnak and Brass when I was at your place, and he was very thorough. But anyway, so that's my rule number 1 whenever I'm teaching. I don't care who I'm teaching, because people are going to be like, some of the lighter gamers, they're going to be like, no, just tell me what I need to get started. It's like, no, I'm not doing that. How are you going to plan out 5 turns in a hand if you don't know what five turns are? And they're like, well, I'm not going to do that anyway. I don't care. You got to know everything. So But my rule number 1 is I am teaching you every aspect of the game before we get started. None of this, why don't you pick which of your 2 personal goals you want first so you can know what to focus on? No. How can you make an informed decision until you know how the game works? And I know that's impractical because most people don't care that much, but I do. When somebody's teaching me a game, I'm the person saying, okay, you mentioned this, but you didn't mention this little icon right here in the bottom right corner, and I can't play the game until I know what that means, so please explain it. And they're like, oh yeah, I forgot. It's this one little thing. I was like, no, that's important. After somebody teaches me a game, I go and read the rule book to audit them. And I'm like, hey, you did this wrong, just so you know. And it happens a lot. And I know people probably get mad at me for it, and I'm obnoxious about it, but it's just, it's something I'm anal about. So I get the gist that you were the opposite of that. Is that right, Carlos?
I am very much, let's get stuck in, let's get rolling, right? And this game, I'm going to get a lot of things wrong, and I'm going to figure things out. But that next game, that's the one that matters to me. So this one's just kind of getting the basics down, the foundations down, unless I win. If I win, it counts 100%. But if I don't win, it's just a learning game.
Now, I will admit, I think the reason that Rob's teaches may go long is because at least whenever he was teaching me those 2 games, he wasn't just teaching me rules. He was teaching me strategy. And that's something I don't do. One, because, a strategy can differ based on your play style. We do these strategy tips here on the podcast, and that's just, it's nice to listen to. I'm not saying you have to do it this way. But if I'm teaching someone a game and I'm telling them, hey, you should do this, and I'm the experienced one in the game, I feel like I'm going to bias them toward doing that, and that may not be their play style, right? So I don't do any of that. I'm not saying you should do this, you shouldn't do that. I'm just saying mechanics. So maybe I'm somewhere between you and Rob. Are
you a fan of when a rulebook gives you strategy?
No.
Like I'm seeing more and more of these rulebooks provide like strategy at the end of it.
I don't like that. For example, the first one I think I saw that did this, I'm not saying it's the first game to do it, but Scythe has something like that. And it's like, what should I do? Oh, just try an action that nobody else has tried. That's not strategy. That's just pushing buttons, I don't like that.
Would you be shocked if in my teaching games of Scythe, I enforced that rule?
Oh my gosh, I would not play with you. If you tried to enforce that, I would either quit.
Rob was not happy. Rob got all like pissy and like, I want to do what I want. No, I said, Rob, you got to do something someone else has done so someone else can see how that works.
I don't like that. In Oath, actually, I know we've talked a lot about Oath from Leader Games, but there's actually not just like, do this, like to do something someone else hasn't done. It specifically says like, play this card, then move your meeple here and do this for each player. And it's all different because you're playing off of what previous people played. So in our first game of Oath, I was like, I don't want to do that. And the other people did. And so we worked it out. So it was like, I went last because if I would have gone in the middle or first, then different cards would be on the table and they wouldn't be able to do it. That's how strict I am about it. It's like, I am my own person. Don't tell me what to do kind of thing. Maybe that's what it is.
Jeez, problems with authority, I see.
That's exactly it. But anyway, whenever I'm teaching, there's kind of, I guess, 3 or 4 things that I really focus on. That'd be the game end trigger is one thing. So what are we doing this until? What's the, because, that's my thing. I push the end game, right? Like in Arc Nova, that was one of my first questions. Like, okay, when does this end? So whenever these 2 things interact. And then what your options are for each turn in extreme, excruciating detail, and then scoring. Scoring's another thing I feel like a lot of times people gloss over during the teach because it's not actually part of the game. But how do you know what your goal is if you don't know how you're getting these points?
How do you get from point A to point B if you don't know what happens at point B?
Right. That's a good way to put it.
And that's what I wrote down for my notes, right? For me, when it comes to teaching games, there's like the main thing. I try to keep the main thing. And for me, that's my description of the game. The way I describe the game is who you are, what you're doing, right? And that's all theme there. It's pretty much all theme.
Yeah, I don't
what
do
you're
that.
doing is going to be mixed with mechanism a little bit. And then finally, how you win. Like those are the 3 things that I start each teach with. Who you are. You're a chocolatier making chocolates. And you're going to be selling these chocolates, right? What you're doing, right? You're going to be creating chocolates, taking it from cocoa beans to chocolate fingers to chocolate nuggets. And you're going to sell these to different retailers who are seeking those types of chocolates. How do you win? And then I go into, you get points doing X, right? And I try to hit all the different ways to get points, right? So those are the 3 most important things for me is kind of hit you with that theme, kind of get you sucked in a little bit, who you are, what you're doing, and what you're doing starts to blend in the mechanisms, and then how you win, and that's pretty much all mechanism with a little bit of theme in there with regards to the how to win part.
Yeah, I usually completely avoid the theme unless I'm playing with someone like
God,
you who I know
man.
needs it. So here's my rule zero of teaching games. Teach 100% of the mechanics in as little time as possible. So if I'm adding a theme that's increasing the teach time, I got to get in my 20 games every game night. I don't get in those games by talking about theme.
The theme matters because of the connection to the mechanisms, right? I can't remember what they call these things. You're a teacher. Is it alliteration, right? Where you try to learn something by, like, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, right? Is that an alliteration? I can't remember.
Not acronym.
Onomatopoeia?
No,
No,
onomatopoeia
that's
is like buzz.
But it's when you take a thing, a process, a system, and you break it down into a phrase or a word or a song, right? So that it makes it easier to remember how that process goes. And for me, the theme in a good game, the theme will help you with the mechanisms and understanding how they work, right? So the whole idea of I'm converting a chocolate from a bean to a chocolate, right? How I do that, it's this part, and this part is processing that chocolate. The theme of being a chocolatier matters, right?
I see that, but I mean, I think that's kind of implied in as I'm explaining.
But and Chocolate Factory may not be the best example of it because it's such a lower complexity game.
Well, but the theme and the mechanics are very much intertwined in that game. I see. Yeah, you're right.
But like in a Clash of Cultures, right? The whole idea of how do I take over somebody's the culture of somebody's city, right? I can tell you the mechanisms all day, but for me, it hit off when it clicked the idea that I'm using my culture to influence a region of your city, and now that part of your city is officially my culture, like Little China is in San Francisco, right? It may be part of America, but in reality, it's part of China. It's just like Calle Ocho in Miami, right? It may be part of America, but listen, bro, that's Cuba. You ain't gonna go to McDonald's and order without knowing Spanish. You see what I'm saying? Like in Clash of Cultures, the theme of it makes me remember the mechanism better, which is this is how I take over your city without war by using the culture influence.
Well, we talked about this a while back on a podcast. I don't want to rehash it too much, but and Vassal even mentions it. If you try to get too cutesy, where it's like we're not calling them dice anymore. Now these are influence cubes, and this isn't a pip. This is a recognition point, those kinds of things, then it makes it more complicated to learn. What game was that? I was talking about Roll for the Galaxies like that. It's the rule book is
and I was talking
unreadable.
about Imperium Legends and Imperium Classics, Osprey games. I'm looking at you.
So you got to be careful with that. One thing I don't hit on, and I think that's another thing maybe where Rob goes a little bit more so than me, is like iconography and stuff like that. 99% of games have or should have a reference for icons. As long as, people understand the mechanics and there's a player aid, they can read. I'll let them look at the icons. Like, for example, in Tapestry, it's 4 tracks. If you're not playing with the expansion, 12 actions on each. 12 times 4, 48. I'm not going over 48 actions with you. I explain the core mechanic of each track. Like, hey, this is the conquest track. If you see this symbol, that means you're going to put your tower down on an adjacent space and roll these 2 dice and pick one of the 2 options. And then if you see it in these different things, like, hey, if you see that symbol with, a laurel wreath around it, it's for how many times have you conquered? And, they can kind of figure it out themselves. So I guess it's about, like, giving them a little impetus to fill in the dots a little bit, which I guess is a little bit kind of what you're saying, giving them what they need. But at the same time, I don't want them to have to be still figuring stuff out whenever they're trying to strategize at the same time. Because unlike you, I count learning games, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but there are many times that someone has taught me a game, and I've been able to come out with a victory. You guys mentioned the other night, on the call-in show, Wayne, that I lost really badly in the first game of Chocolate Factory, and I think I came in third in the second one. And they said maybe he was just letting us win. No, whenever I'm teaching a game, there's no mercy. There's no holding back. I don't want them to learn how to play whenever their example is not playing well. There's no mercy at the table here. I'm going to push that in game so I can get my other games in, and you'll do better next time. I know you're different. You say you almost always try to lose when you're teaching a game, right?
Right, and I'm pulling up my app here to look at the scoring. So you're telling me your 68 points in Chocolate Factory was not on purpose? Like that was you not holding back?
Yes. Well, I like I said, before I played with y'all, I think I'd played 4 games. I'd won 3 of the 4, so I was feeling pretty confident. And the only one I'd lost was my learning game. But I don't
beat
know.
you by
guys were good at
20 points.
Yeah, hey, no need
And
to
I
brag
came in
here.
third. Oh. Is this not the venue? I should put it on Facebook. That's where I should put it.
No, you guys were doing a really good job of, I think, maximizing on points. I think I was trying to do a little bit too much of everything. Like I was saying earlier, trying to do the public goals, also do the private goals, also diversify, also have pieces left over at the end, also try to have the most personal goals. Whereas I think in the second game, was it Wayne?
Yeah, Wayne went all corner
personal
shots.
goals, right? Yeah. And he won with that, right?
Oh yeah, he won handedly.
So-
Which afterwards it made us say, is the game broken? Is it like viticulture where I can win without making any wine? But I wasn't ready to say that because it's almost like how Rob and I felt about Brass early on when someone figured out the Loki strategy. We sat for weeks just talking about I think Blood Rage is broken. I think Blood Rage won't work because the Loki strategy.
You just said
but once you
Brass and
identify
Loki strategy, and I got so confused. To be clear, we're talking about
Oh,
Blood
did I
Rage,
say
right?
Brass? I'm sorry, folks. I'm talking about Blood Rage. It's the
I'm
other
like,
game. with
what
a
is
B.
the Loki strategy in Brass?
It's where you sell off all your beer and burn all your factories down because there's no going back. Valhalla, baby. No, I'm talking about Blood Rage. And Blood Rage, the Loki strategy is only works when it's not defended, right? So if now that we know Wayne's strategy on that, how do we stop that? I don't know.
It'd have to be
How do we
counter-picking
mitigate?
cards, looking at his goals. Don't let him get employees or factory
That
parties.
help with that.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
That's the part of the
triplicator.
game that I have not yet mastered is looking at other players' boards. What else you got on
It's funny
TG
how we got
games?
back to Chocolate Factory on that.
Yeah, I know. We jumped back to a different topic. That's a sign of a good game. You always want to talk about it.
I think I'm pulling the trigger on that one. It's going to happen.
That's my job as a
teach-wise,
fellow
right?
board game. It more is just making you spend more money on board games.
It's not spending money. It's introducing people to new and different games. Like I don't think I would have ever heard of it had you not brought it up. And then now we've got this shared connection of Chocolate Factory. Like, from here forward, when it's on my shelf and it gets played, it's going to be, if it wasn't for Mitch, I would have never known this game existed. And
You
that's
can't
a cool
get rid of
feeling.
me now.
Almost kind of like After the Empire. Like it just, and that's so cool to have it. For me, teaching wise, I'm the opposite. I don't want to get into every detail. And maybe I'm almost like a kick dog on it because I've tried to teach family and friends games, and non-gamers will struggle to sit and listen to you explain everything. So it's almost like I don't want to get into too much detail, which is why I stick to that, who you are, what you're doing, and how you win. All right, let's try something. Let's go. Kind of a feeling.
Well,
And I don't want to sit and read rules to you.
In our game group, I think we're at the point that if I don't do that, and if there's even the smallest little mechanism that wasn't mentioned or was explained incorrectly or some detail was left out, I'm going to get not catcalled. That's catcalling something else. I'm going to get called out
Hey,
for
that
it.
might happen in this game group too.
I'm going to get called out for it. Oh, you didn't say that. I lost the game because of that, and that's completely on
That
me because
never happens.
I'm the one who probably was the first one to do that. But I'm kind of looping back a little bit, but your whole who you are, what you're doing. I hate this thing of like, the goal of the game is to win. You win by getting the most victory points. Like, that's such a waste of ink. Why is that in the rule book? Why is that in every video? Like, what's the point? Is it just a meme at this point? I don't know.
And you're right, because I've heard myself say that a lot.
But it's not just you. I mean,
I'll tell you what.
It's everywhere.
I'll tell you what, when it comes to forgetting a rule, and I joke about that like it never happens, but I think it was like 5 or 6 years ago, Lonnie forgot to mention a rule in a game, which then let him win the game. And there probably isn't a month that goes by where when Lonnie says something on the Facebooks that someone doesn't mention, oh, but make sure he teaches you everything, otherwise he's going to win the game with a rule that he didn't tell you about to the end. So yes, people will hold it against you. I think it's been over 5 years now that we're still holding against Lonnie. The one time he taught, I think it might have been like Power Grid way back when.
Yeah, well,
Which is why people don't teach. People are afraid to teach. People are afraid to step up and be the teacher for fear of the critique of their teach.
You just got to get good then. At Sobo, I feel like every conversation is also looking back to Sobo at some point. For a few more weeks, it will anyway. At Sobo, I'm in charge of scheduling like all the demos and all that, and like I love that. It's just like I am the teacher of teachers. You know, I'm demoing a couple games, and
Teach.
I'm the person who's, you know, I kind of help schedule what the games were and get the teachers and stuff, and I just love that aspect of gaming. But to be fair, so even though I'm gonna play my heart out if I'm playing, I am watching every turn like a hawk, auditing what people are doing, making sure that they're doing it correctly. So that'll help a little bit with it, I think. But yeah, you're gonna get to experience that at BGG. You and Rob are playing Ankh with me, right? I just
And
said
that's
BGG,
where
so
my brain doesn't work that way. I struggle just to figure out what I'm gonna be doing. I can't keep track of what you were doing, but I know how important it is, especially with a new player, because what you don't want is for them to get a few turns in doing it the wrong way, and then you realize they've been doing it the wrong way, then you try to correct them. Not only do you have the bad feelings of the scoring in this game is going to be off, but there's also that negative learner experience of you cheated me out of this. Like, you taught it to me this way, and I thought it worked this way. Now my whole game's ruined because I thought it worked this way, but it doesn't. You know, it's not logical to think that way, but that's emotions. They had something, and you took it from them. I had a system, and you took it from me. So it's very important for somebody to watch. What I usually ask is, after your turn is done, look to your left and watch that. You audit the person to your left that's going after you, because you're not going to go around until it comes back around the board. You've got the most time to watch and audit them.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I just don't trust other people enough to do that.
And this is why we can't have nice things.
Yeah, exactly. So kind of on that topic, you were talking about, you know, if there's several turns in and making a mistake. At our table, as hardcore as we are, you know, as strict and totalitarian as I am, we always exercise the, oh, I forgot to do this, go ahead and redo it kind of thing, even if it's not a learning game. That's one thing I struggle with, and we talked about that with online gaming, is you don't have that undo button, right? As long as what you did, what you're changing it to, isn't affected by something that happened. Like if it's, oh, I meant to move my guy here. Well, you're telling me this after I already moved my guy there. No, we're not going to redo that. But like if it doesn't affect anything, any of the game state. So that helps a little bit, I think, if it's a little, you have to be a little forgiving when you're teaching. And I think that's easier to do if you're a teacher not playing in the game. So usually whenever I'm teaching a game, I also want to play, like I said, to kind of be an example. But you've talked about before where you teach and you just kind of watch. You're a third party, right? You do that a lot?
Yeah. I enjoy bringing people to the table and hanging out. I don't need to be a part of the game, and that allows me the opportunity to be the auditor, the watcher, the coach, the answer question guy, because, man, and like William is the biggest culprit at this. He struggles to learn games because he doesn't trust you. So he doesn't want to ask you any questions about rules or mechanisms or anything for fear that he's giving up his strategy. And we're talking first time play type stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like in a first time play, I will show you my hand. All right, listen,
Yeah.
I'm thinking about playing this one, but I want to make sure that it does this. Does it really do this? Whereas William will look at his card and think about asking, and then look at it, and then say, never mind. He will not ask you. And you're like, bro, ask the question. No, because then you'll know what I'm going to do. And I'm like, how else do you learn?
Yeah, so the other night when we were playing Arc Nova, for example, I had a card. I wasn't sure about it. And so, to be fair, I'm not just going to show it to the person that taught me, because if there's any advantage to be gotten, I want it to be fair. I let everybody see the card, and I said, can you clarify this card? And they said, yeah. And then my friend who's teaching me, he was trying to show me an example of his cards, and he covered everything on the card except for this one symbol he was trying to show. I'm like, dude, I learned this game 3 minutes ago. What is that going to tell me? But I think, you know, he knows how I am. I'm hardcore about it, so I appreciate that. But yeah,
because even the learning game counts for you.
What's that?
Even the learning game counts for you.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Which is why, so, okay, at Sobo, you know, we have the option, as we call ourselves game gurus, the people that are teaching the games. We can sit down and play the games with the people we're teaching to. On mine, I elected not to, because these people are paying to get into this event. I'm not trying to, you know, smash them into the ground, but I just can't turn it off. So in that situation, I will be the independent observer, teaching, auditing, not playing.
Well, let's get into some real-world examples of teaching, right? Because you talked about not being able to turn it off. I struggle to turn it off, and I believe I've turned my kids off of board games. I've never been someone to let my kids win. Look at my 18-year-old now. He's competitive too. But the fact that from age like 6 on, I would never let him win anything. You're going to have to earn it, right? Have you struggled with that because your kids are much younger than mine, you're just getting started with that. Maybe I'm giving you some wisdom in my old age. Find a way to turn it off with the kids. Otherwise, they won't play with you when they're adults.
Well, so what I've learned is whenever my kids were a good bit younger, even before they were at board games, we had this game where it's like you flip a card and it's a pattern and you have to organize these cups in a certain color way. And, whenever they were little, we would smash them at this game whenever they wanted to play. But I struggle turning it off. And I'm like, I'm not going to, just let them win because what lessons does that teach them? But like it got to the point where like my daughter was very sad. And so like the next time we played, I let her win and it was fine. But nowadays, what I've learned what I have to do is I have to play games that are on their level that they're competitive with me on. Things like Santorini, things like Reef,
King of Tokyo, things with some randomness in there to help level the playing field.
River Dragons. And I don't have to handicap myself and they can still beat me. And something like Santorini, they're really good at it. But at Santorini, we'll probably have a 50-50 win rate. They have never let me win King of Tokyo, and I've tried. So I think it's about game choice in that situation. Whenever they get a little bit older and get into heavier things, we'll see.
So that's going to be our topic for how we teach games, because the Beans and Dice podcast is not about how to game or what to game. It's about how we game, and that's our conversation on how we teach. Close us out, Mitchell.
Yeah, so sorry if you guys are getting tired of hearing about Southern Board Game Festival, but it's kind of my hometown game festival. I just wanted to mention not only are tickets still on sale, badges, it's March 19th and 20th, but also we just recently posted a giveaway on Facebook. If you go to the Southern Board Game Festival page, if you share and tag someone in the post, there are some games that they're going to be giving away. I think there's a week or so that you have to enter it. Just some free games you might potentially get, and at the very least, even if you don't win, you'll get some information on the festival and maybe show up and play some games with us.
Send me those links. I'm going to make sure to put that in the show description. The link to the Facebook and the Sobo link, we'll put that in the show description so you folks at home know how to get it. We will be publishing this podcast on Sunday. That's going to be Sunday
Which because you're listening to it.
For you, it's Sunday. For me, it's not. It's like Thursday. But we'll be posting it Sunday the 6th. So I think it's going to give you about a week to put in for those contests.
Yes, I didn't think about that. Time does pass between now and Sunday. But yeah, I mean, it just went up, I believe, today. So yeah, there's time.
Okay, good. Because, it's past Carlos and Mitchell talking to future Carlos and Mitchell about what future audience can do. Right, Marty McFly?
Now you're getting a little confusing here.
Back to the Future, man.
Oh, no, I got that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the contest ends on Friday, March 11th. So even with Sunday, they'll have 5 days to enter.
All right, so you have 5 days from when this podcast drops to get into the Sobo Facebook. I'll put the link in the description. Mitchell will send it to me tonight. And that'll wrap up our podcast. Hey, this has been, it's like 6 or 7 episodes now in a row, like without fail that we've done. That's,
I don't know, something like that. Sounds about right.
Not many things in my life have I been that consistent with. So
hey, the call-in show has been pretty consistent.
Yes, that's like the one thing I can think of. Outside of that, now I got the podcast. It's actually having a streak going here. So this is feeling good. I feel like we're actually putting out content on a consistent, regular basis for you folks at home. So we want to thank you for joining us. Ask you to check out our YouTube Thursday night call-in show, 9 p.m. Eastern, to call in and talk to us about this podcast. Did you listen to it? What'd you think? What are your comments on it? Call into the call-in show and tell us. If not, email us at beansanddice@gmail.com. I'm Carlos.
I'm Mitchell.
And we're a podcast about how we game.
Thanks for watching the Beans and Dice podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
One thing I was going to say, oh God, I completely blanked.
That'll remind me to cut the silence on this one.
Sorry. I have no idea what I was going to say, so I'm just going to not say anything.
All right, I pulled the trigger. It'll be here Saturday.
Oh, you just bought it? Gosh, dang it. I had a good point. We were talking about auditing. Oh, okay. I remember. You want to clap?
There we go. Do I look as awkward as you do when you clap?
My microphone was in the way.
Like a baby seal? All right. Let me get the real clap.